who will be the next James Bond 007 in the service of Her Majesty the Queen. The king is the king, right? It was always the queen in the movies, but now it's going to be the king. I guess they got to change that in the next movies, in the next upcoming James Bond movies. But we're going to answer this question by looking at the asteroid astrology in the birth charts of the main guys who played James Bond, as well as the ones who are now touted as candidates to play James Bond, right? That's what we're going to do in this video. Let's go. All right, so if you're not using asteroids in astrology, you really don't know like the intense and immense and incredible accuracy of asteroids when you add them to a birth chart, right? That it's insane, it's mind-blowing, right? In the beginning, you will have your mind blown when you start looking at it. I tell you, 99% of astrologers don't use asteroids, or they only use like the 6 or 7 asteroids. They don't use all the thousands of asteroids that exist. If you add them, and if you have the tools to add them, if you know how to do it, it's not so easy, I admit. If you know how to do it, then you can add an incredible amount of nuance to the reading of any chart, right? You can really understand the real kind of detailed aspects, nuances of the story, of the life story that you're going to incarnate into, right? And I'm going to show you in this video by looking at James Bond, right? There's an asteroid called James Bond, the asteroid number 9007, right? It's actually number 007. I just realized this right now. The asteroid is 007. The asteroid 9007, right? I literally just realized this now. You can see, I didn't realize it when I was preparing this video. But this asteroid, it's super prominently placed in the chart of every actor who played James Bond, right? And it's very special because for everyone it's placed differently. It tells you something about that actor. I'm going to show you, right? And then by looking at this, we can tell who's going to be, where the archetypal probabilities are and the possibilities are for who's going to be the next James Bond as well, right? So let's start with Sean Connery. Sean Connery, right? Sean Connery, he is obviously the main guy, right? He was the first James Bond. He defined the role.
Bond. James Bond.
He defined the archetype in the collective consciousness. When when people think James Bond, you would think Sean Connery, right? Even younger people who, which was way before your time, you would still probably know Sean Connery. And Sean Connery, right? Where does he have the asteroid James Bond? It's very fittingly on his Sun with Neptune, right? He has a Sun-Neptune conjunction, right? Which is basically he embodies the dream. Neptune is the dream, right? And the archetype, the symbol, the dream. Sun is the center of consciousness, identity, right? He embodies the dream, and James Bond is right here. So he embodies the dream or the image of James Bond, right? Makes sense. It's with the sun. Okay, makes sense. Let's look at the next ones. And the next big famous actor who played James Bond is Roger Moore, right? Sir Roger Moore. He played James Bond.
My name's Bond. James Bond.
And he played a very different James Bond. This is actually a common theme because the production house, whenever they hire a new actor, or whenever they get a new actor on board, it's always for a stretch of movies. And every time they kind of change the character and the vibe of the movies, right? Because they want to go with the times, they want to kind of be fresh, right? And with Roger Moore, what they did is, Roger Moore, he played a much more witty character. Like he's all about, he's a very suave guy. He's always kind of making these very smart remarks.
To us, Mr. Bond, we are the best.
There's a useful 4-letter word, and you're full of it.
Like snarky, a little bit, like he's like a smart ass a little bit, right? But also he's very smooth talker. He's a trickster. He's a trickster, right? He's always doing this witty things where he comes up with tricks of how to outmaneuver and outsmart the opponents, right? He doesn't have the crazy gadgets. He's just very smart, right? And that's how you can see in the chart, right? In the chart, you have his James Bond, his asteroid James Bond stands where? That's the only thing we're looking at here, right? Is exactly with Mercury. What is Mercury? Mercury is Hermes, right? The trickster god, the god of communication and of exchanges and of traders and of tricks as well, right? So the mind tricks, and it's very telling. So you got Sean Connery with the Sun and Neptune. He embodies the dream ideal of James Bond, right? Roger Moore, the trickster, with Mercury. What else? Who else we got? There was another guy in between. In between these two, there was a guy called George Lazenby. Yeah, he only played one James Bond movie. He only played one movie, and he kind of accidentally was found. Like he wasn't a famous actor at all. He was like he wasn't an actor at all. They just kind of picked him up and they said like, hey, I think you can do this, right?
Who are you?
Bond. James Bond.
And he was like, oh yeah, sure, I'm gonna do it. And then it totally got over his head. He was like, after one movie, he came and he said like, I don't want to be identified with just this role, with this kind of stuffy role, with wearing a suit. This was in the 60s and everybody was hippies. He wanted to be a hippie. And he said, I don't want to be identified as the guy in the suit. I want to have a real career where I always play lots of different characters. I don't want to be just like, put in like pigeonholed, right, as James Bond. And what happened is that he rejected they offered him a 7-movie deal and with millions of dollars back then, and he rejected the deal. And instead, what happened is that he never had a career. He never had a real career. He never got any other roles. And he actually ended up being known as that guy who played James Bond, who played only one James Bond movie, right? So really tragic story. Like he ended up getting exactly what he didn't want, but without the fame and the money, right? So in this guy, you can see in his chart, he has the asteroid James Bond, right? It's here. Asteroid James Bond is here. And it's in a direct opposition, because there's nothing up there, but it's in a direct opposition, right, to Uranus. And Uranus is obviously the principle of accidents, right? He's kind of the accidental James Bond, like James Bond in opposition to Uranus, right? He's the accidental James Bond. He accidentally got it and then accidentally lost it again, right? So that was his contribution to truth be told though, he has like a cult following, right? You saw there was Moon as well. Moon and Uranus. Moon was there too. So Moon is like the people, right? He has actually amongst the people, especially amongst the kind of hardcore fans of James Bond, he has like a cult following who think like he was the best James Bond, or up there with Sean Connery, right? So that should be added to the story. Now the next one is Roger Moore. Roger Moore, I already did Roger Moore. I don't know what's happening. Mercury retrograde, guys, right now. This is crazy. It's not Roger Moore. It's Pierce Brosnan. Pierce Brosnan, right? Pierce Brosnan. I think I forgot one. It's okay. Pierce Brosnan.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
He is he came in and he had all these gadgets, right? He had all these special gadgets, so you could think that's Uranus again. No, but that was not actually what he was most known for is, or what he kind of most added to the role is he added this. He was a ladies' man, right? He was a ladies' man. He was like this super. He was a gentleman, like a real gentleman, like super smooth, and smooth in a different way, right? Not in a. He was like super. Some almost a little bit, I wouldn't say effeminate, but you had this kind of, back then, this was the 90s, early 2000s, you had this metrosexual kind of trend back then that the stars wanted to tap into. And I don't know, he's kind of a little bit softer, a bit more gentle, a bit more charming, very, very charming guy, right? Very, very good with the ladies, right? Extremely good with the ladies, always with the women in all the movies, right? And that's the kind of aspect they highlighted most in Pierce Brosnan, that he's good with the ladies. All of the James Bond, James Bond always is, but especially with him, with Pierce Brosnan. And he has, lo and behold, the asteroid James Bond with Moon. With Moon, right? Makes sense. Moon is the principle of women, right? Femininity, women, right? Being understanding women is Moon, right? He's the James Bond who understands women. Now that's Pierce Brosnan. Now the next one is the current one, the one who finally died, right? Who the first James Bond who died in a movie is the Daniel Craig, right? Daniel Craig came in and he brought a different vibe again to James Bond.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
James Bond, as I'm telling you, he's always bringing a different vibe. The vibe that they brought with Daniel Craig was much more gritty, much more hardcore, much harder, right? Much harder. Like the guy was hard and he would get his hands dirty, right? And he would get into dangerous situations. And he would get into just, hard, gritty fights. And eventually he died. He was the first, only James Bond actor who died, right? And what would you expect this to be? Well, there it is. James Bond is with Saturn and Mars and Aries. Saturn and Mars in Aries. So he has a Saturn-Mars conjunction in Aries, right? Which is like the hardcore fighter, right? The hard, gritty fighter. Who he's a little bit brutal or a little bit ruthless. He has this ruthless streak about him, right? Obviously, he also has like all the other James Bonds. He has also the women and and the charm and stuff. But this is what sets him apart. He's gritty, right? And then James Bond is also with Saturn, and Saturn obviously stands for death too, right? Saturn is traditionally the ruler of death, right? And he's literally the only James Bond who died as James Bond, right? So you can see, again, where the asteroid stands, which planets it stands, tells you exactly the nuances of the story. This is what I've been telling you. It tells you the nuances of the story, right? By the way, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. Comment and like and just, boost the algorithm with me. Pack. That's much appreciated when you do. And now I'm going to tell you and also, if you want to work with me directly, you can go and find the consultations with me below in the links where we can optimize your impact, your abundance, your health, your development, whatever you want to develop in alignment with the cycles. That we can do. If you want to do anything outside of that, we can't. If you want to go against the cycles or against God's will, I will not help you with that. But if you want to attune yourself more with God's will and the divine plan, then I can help you with that. So we can do that too if you want. Now, the last piece that I'm giving you here is I'm going to tell you about the actors that they're looking at for potential new James Bond actors, right? That's what we said we're going to do. So there's a whole bunch of these people who are kind of touted as candidates, right? There's a whole bunch of these. I had to look at them, right? I had to look at there's Henry Cavill and Paul Mescal and Theo James, James Norton, Josh O'Connor, all of these people. I looked at all of their charts, right? I looked at all of their charts, and none of these people has the asteroid James Bond standing anywhere interesting or anywhere important. They're all just, the asteroid James Bond is just somewhere, it's not connecting with anything. So James Bond doesn't play a role in their lives. Doesn't play a defining role in their lives. So I can tell you it's not going to be any of these guys, right? Very unlikely, unless I miss something, unless I really miss something. But I can tell you two people where it does stand very, 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 very clear, right? Very, very clear, on a very, very prominent position, right? And these are, well, there's three actually. Okay, three. There was one which doesn't really count. There was one, Idris Elba. Idris Elba, he has James Bond with Venus, but it's gimmicky, right? It's not like, okay, he would have brought a kind of a more lover kind of vibe to it with Venus, but he's not, he already said he's not going to do it. And I think also the time is kind of over where they're trying to rewrite roles, apart from if you're not Disney, and, even Disney still doing it, but they're not really trying to rewrite roles anymore these days. I don't think that's really something that has a high probability. Now, the high probability where it is not just probable, people are talking about it, but it's actually super clearly written in the charts, is two people. The one of them, I will tell you right away who's the front runner by far, and that's Aaron Taylor Johnson. Aaron Taylor Johnson, right? Aaron Taylor Johnson is somebody who has He's he's like touted as the main guy to play this. And he has here, you can see here, the asteroid James Bond is here. And you're going to say, okay, where is this? What is this hitting? It's actually in a direct opposition to Sun, right? Down to the degree to Sun. Okay, Sun is here. And not just in the direct opposition to Sun, but also in a direct conjunction. You see here the conjunction with the galactic center. The galactic center is a degree in Neptune, which stands for incredible fame, right? Immense fame and importance, right? So you see here, galactic center, James Bond, directly opposite the Sun, like this, okay? I don't know what's happening with my marker. My marker is kind of acting really weird, but okay, I don't know. Okay, that like this, right? You can see it? Okay. Sun, opposite, galactic center, and James Bond. All right? So what does it mean? It means this guy, Aaron Johnson, right? He is somebody who, in his chart, it's written that he could be somebody who redefines the role for new generations. He would not be somebody, he would be basically the new Sean Connery, right? The new Sean Connery, because he has James Bond on his son. He's the identity, right? He becomes this thing more so than anybody else. He would not be a twist on James Bond. He would be the new James Bond that many, many generations after, 4, 5, 6 generations, the next 4 or 5 actors will look up to this guy the same way that everybody looked up to Sean Connery, right? That's written in his chart. And it's written with the Galactic Center. He would be super famous too. The other guy, I'm not going to show you now in the interest of time, was Cillian Murphy. He actually has as well James Bond conjunct Sun, right? He would be a perfect James Bond as well. He's probably a little bit too old already, or he doesn't want to do it. Just like Idris Elba. Idris Elba rejected. He says, I don't want to play this. Cillian Murphy, I think he did too. So that only leaves Aaron Taylor Johnson, and the astrology is super clear. And also, I showed you how the asteroids are just mind-blowing when you work with them right. All right? Have a good one. Be blessed and be well.